All right, hey everybody, and welcome to our session for the Wrestling Takedown Fantasy Football League. I'm one of your commissioners, Scott Soltis, aka Ric Flair. The other two commissioners are here with me tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey, brother, this is Anthony Rossi, aka the Hulkster.
Oh yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage.
And we will not get any points for our impersonations.
Yeah, I was gonna say you guys are gonna have sore throats in the morning. I guess just to be more in the spirit, I'll give just one. Woo! So
I think when I try to do Hogan, I get Macho Man mixed in there sometimes too. So I don't know.
That's only natural. But anyways, thank you for joining us. Those of you who are here live, and for those of you who are watching, welcome. And for anyone who just stumbled across this video, God help you, what rabbit hole led you to this. But we're here tonight to go through some of the finer points of our unique, fun, crazy fantasy football league. We've got some owners here that we might do some Q&A with afterwards. So we've got a three-part to our evening tonight. First, we'll talk about, again, some of the more unique things about this league that we're doing to try to make it fun for everybody. Then we're going to do our faction draft. The three co-commissioners are the leaders of the three initial factions for the league. So we're going to draft our factions tonight. So you'll know who's going to be a member of the Four Horsemen and who's going to be a member of, the other less good factions. And then lastly, we're going to end with a Royal Rumble, and that Royal Rumble is going to be simulated on WWE 2K22. It has all of our 12 wrestlers in it, plus 8 randos, and your order of elimination is going to determine your order for picking your draft slot in our upcoming startup draft. So unless anyone else has anything to add, I'll go ahead and kick us off with some of the top level things. When we get to the pay-per-views and special events, I'll hand it over to one of the other guys. All right. So this is a nice little summary of all the stuff we're doing. We'll share these slides with you. You have the rule book. So, I'm not going to belabor this. We'll talk about scoring in the lineup, again, focusing mostly on things that are a little bit different. This idea of faction and tiers, the various events that we'll be doing in the pay-per-view schedule, prizes and playoffs, how we're going to do the startup draft. And then again, like I mentioned, we'll have the faction draft, and then we're going to simulate the Rumble to figure out the draft pick order. So in terms of starting lineup setups and scoring systems, this is all stuff that's going to be somewhat familiar to you if you've played in Legends of Canton or most IDP leagues that are large format. So we're 12 teams strong, 22 starters, 11 on offense, 11 on defense. It is a super flex league. It is tight end premium with 2 starting tight ends. It is full best ball, full IDP. We set up the IDP so you have a little bit of flexibility, but the starting positions are going to mostly mirror starting positions that you'd see on an NFL field in a given week. And we're using no position left behind scoring, so it juices the stats for some of the positions that tend to get left behind in traditional scoring settings. If any of this is new to any of you and you want to see how this shakes out in a league with these settings, we'll be happy to share some links so you can look at top players across positions. That might be available in the league right now if you go into player research, but MFL can be a little bit quirky with new leagues not auto-populating past data if there hasn't been past seasons. So if you're new to any of this and you want to see how things typically pan out, we'll be happy to share a link to a league where you can see some of that stuff. This is full best ball. So some of you who do other leagues with us know we do a lot of modified best ball. There's going to be enough other stuff going on in this league where we didn't want you to have to worry about either setting lineups every week or activating and deactivating players every week. So we decided to go full best ball. We're going to do scoring and standings based on victory points. So you get 2 points if you win your matchup, 1 point if you tie, no points if you lose, and then 2 points if you finish in the top third of points for the week, 1 point if you finish in the middle third, and no points if you finish in the bottom. Sum those up, and that's how you get your victory points, which determine standings. I already mentioned 22 starters, 50 roster spots. We expand that in the off season. There's a full calendar available in the rules that you all have that we'll also make sure are linked on the website. So that's all there. There's also waivers that are going to start probably the first Wednesday after the draft concludes. So that way, you can fill out your roster the rest of the way after the startup draft. $1,000 blind bidding budgets, and then first come, first serve waivers in the season. So in the season, the blind bid waivers will process on a Wednesday, and then from Wednesday to Sunday, or players who are playing Monday, you can get Monday morning for free. And then after that, all the players lock again. So again, this is going to be familiar to most of you who have been in leagues like this before, but any questions, you got 3 commissioners here to help out with things. And then, this is a league that's meant to be fun. There's lots of ways to win money, lots of ways to get extra picks. This is a dynasty league, so draft picks are a big deal. And if you want to pull a Hogan and just rip it off, you're more than welcome to send a video, and might win you a pick for being really, really committed to your character. I know at least one of you is intentionally trying to be a clown. I would not suggest going in public in full clown makeup and just walking around, because that's a good way to get a different kind of attention. But we'll get to in a little bit. We do have prizes for chatting in character and really trying to maintain this illusion.
So I'd say one thing I'd add on the
Yeah.
rosters when we talked about this stuff was wanted to make sure in season we weren't allowing it to be too much like hoarding of prospects and stuff like that. So that's why you guys will see that it's a 50 roster limit right now. Again, I think that's meant to try to keep everybody engaged in the right way, and you don't have to be researching every third string defensive player that's out there. If you do, it's still to your benefit at the end of the day, probably, but we tried to keep it so that there's a good stream of open players, I'd say, on waivers.
Yeah, and one thing I will mention that I forgot to mention before is, even though this is best ball, there are waivers and you can do trades. In a lot of best ball leagues, you draft and then it's done. To the extent that you want to draft and be done, you can probably still have a pretty successful season. But like Anthony said, we set the roster sizes where there should be a pretty active waiver market if you want to be a part of it, active trading market. We selected a lot of owners who really like to trade. So I'm sure trade bait's going to be active. There's going to be a lot of stuff. And we also have factions set up, which include or encourage maybe even a little bit of collusion in points at your own risk. So this idea of factions, factions or stables, depending on when you started and stopped watching wrestling, it's just these groups of wrestlers. Think of DX or the NWO or the Four Horsemen or Nation of Domination. There's tons and tons of them out there. We wanted to have some things that, again, made this a non-standard fantasy football league. So given we're 12 teams and all good factions had at least 4 members, we decided to do 3 factions with 4 wrestlers each. We're going to draft those factions live here in a few minutes. Us 3 commissioners are the leaders of the factions in year 1, but after the end of this season, the factions can absolutely get shaken up. Their names can change, their composition can change. The heavyweight champion is automatically a faction leader, and then the highest victory points from within the existing factions will be the new leaders. So we'll have a faction draft every year that can shake that up. And factions do matter. In addition to being this fun gimmick that we put in the league, factions are how we figure out tag teams. And if you win the tag team championship, you get some cool stuff. Factions are how we do Survivor Series, and you win Survivor Series, you get some cool stuff. Also, you get some cash if your faction succeeds. So if you're in the faction that has the heavyweight champ, just like in real wrestling, you get to bask in that reflected glory. You get a payout based on how well your faction has performed and what belts they may hold. So again, you're going to occasionally be competing against people in your own faction. It is a regular head-to-head schedule. I'll talk about tiers next and how we set those up to make it so that you're not constantly playing people from your own group, but you are going to play them once in a while. But the big thing here is, we wanted to set this up so that you're not only interested in invested in your own team, but also other teams that are in your faction or in your stable. Either of you have anything to add about factions before I move into tiers?
I think we're good there. Meant to be, I'd say, a fun added aspect to what we're doing, and maybe add a little bit of unpredictability.
Yep. All right, so next we have tiers, and the only reason we have a slide about this is we want to make sure there's no confusion about it. In some leagues, you need to do so well to get promoted into a tier, and your tiers dictate your prizes and things like that. The reason that we have these tiers of, headliners, mid-carders, low-carders, and jobbers are because we needed some kind of structure in the league to ensure that faction mates weren't playing each other constantly. If you tried to make each faction a division, all the MFL settings want you to play people in your own group the most, and that's the opposite of what we wanted. So the workaround we did for that was to make these 4 tiers. The tiers are each going to have a team from each faction in them. In the future, it'll be based on the victory points from the previous season within those factions. And anytime you hear me talk about victory points, and I have the note here down at the bottom, points for are the tiebreaker that we're going to use, because it's very likely that we're going to have a lot of ties in terms of victory points at the end of the season. So anytime you see this for any purposes, that's a tiebreaker. But the important things to stress here are, one, this will help with competitive balance, because the top VP teams from each faction are going to be in the top tier. The number 2 VP teams are going to be in the second, 3 in the third, and 4 in the fourth. So you're going to be playing teams that had similar performance to you last year more frequently than you're playing all of the other teams. The other one just random, and there's a little explainer in the rule book about the MFL scheme that we use for that. But again, something else I want to stress is anyone from any tier can be champion. You can be a jobber, and if you end the season, in the title match and you win the title match, you're the champion. It doesn't matter that you're in the jobber tier to start the season, and people aren't moving tiers in the middle of the season. Again, this was more just a logistical convenience to help us with scheduling and competitive balance. So this year, since we don't have past victory points, we're going to use a third-party service to rank our teams, and we'll put the top team from each faction in tier 1, second ranked team from each faction in tier 2, and so on. So that's tiers and how they work. Anything you guys want to add here?
Nothing for me.
All right, then I'll turn it over to one of you to talk about the schedule and some of the special events that we have in the league.
I don't mind. Oh, there we go. I was trying to get my screen back to normal. So I'll say one of the main things, as we considered how to put SummerSlam, some of the pay-per-view matches in place, is try to keep the entire season meaningful at the end of the day. So initially, when the 3 of us were messaging back and forth, I think we shared the idea of how can you almost break the season up into quarters. So there's roughly 16 games that you're working with, that every 4 games, there's something pretty meaningful on the line. So 2 kind of main things that, your pay-per-views, as we've kind of outlined in the rules, those will be your SummerSlams, your WrestleManias, your Survivor Series. And I think the King of the Ring is the other big one that we put in there. It's really where we have the biggest prizes in place. But with that whole thought of actually trying to make each quarter of the season mean something, SummerSlam is an example, and we'll go through some of the details on each of the individual matches. That's an example of something where you're actually able to earn early in the season, and basically the first 4 weeks of the season, I think, as we have it laid out, you can earn a spot in the playoffs, basically. So that's the spirit of what we're after here. And then I think by introducing really the essence of what's trying to happen in some of these pay-per-views, Survivor Series is probably a great example of that. Also the Royal Rumble. We also tried to kind of craft outcomes that mirror what I think you see in the WWE, but correlate back to something within fantasy. So I think that's the overview, and then we'll kind of go through in the next slide here, I think, some of the specifics. Anything we missed here, guys? So these are we'll call these the main events, the pay-per-view schedule. And like I said before, you kind of have your big 4, and then plus WrestleMania is really where we're going to conduct the playoffs at the end of the day. You have SummerSlam, and kind of key thing there is this is early in the season. Top 3 teams in victory points compete in a match. It's really you're distributing out the heavyweight title earlier in the season. And across that 3-week period, the top team with the cumulative points ends up with a heavyweight title belt early in the season. And then it also earns you a playoff spot, which will be conducted in WrestleMania, which I think we have in week 16 and 17. That's on a later slide here. Survivor Series. This is really an opportunity for the factions to compete together. Best faction overall wins a 2nd round pick. And again, it's kind of a lead up period to a main event. So it's 3 weeks leading up to Survivor Series itself. And each week, and kind of the essence of Survivor Series, that people can kind of progressively get eliminated from a faction, the bottom scoring team amongst everybody there is eliminated. And then once we're all done at the end of that 4-week period in Survivor Series, faction with the highest best ball score of all teams wins a second round pick, and the second team gets a third round pick. So again, this is kind of again the thought of anti-tanking, I'd say, throughout the entire rules here, is that winning throughout the season really is giving you some incentive to gather extra draft picks. And then plus we kind of covered the things with the roster sizes as well, that we want people to field competitive rosters and not feel like they have to be trading. You still are, completely willing, I think, to do that and welcome to do that if you want to, but there's a lot of incentive to field, I think, a competitive roster on a consistent basis. The Royal Rumble, I think this will be an interesting one, and just in the spirit of the event itself, 3 weeks leading up to the Royal Rumble, team scoring in the bottom half of participants are eliminated. So you basically get thrown over the ropes if you're in the bottom half of participants in each of the individual weeks. And then as we get to the final week, highest scoring out of the remaining teams ends up, again, you win a playoff spot within WrestleMania. Highest scoring eliminated team out of in the first 3 weeks is actually able to run back in. So we're in the 4th week. If you were the highest scoring eliminated team, you're part of a final 4 that competes in that final week there. And then guys, in this is where we had highest scoring. Is it in the Royal Rumble in the 4th week that wins it versus cumulative in this case? Okay, just double checking there. King of the Ring. These are heads up matches across a multi-week period here. And then this is based on the 8 teams who aren't in position to basically make the playoffs at that point in time. So our playoff spots are going to be the teams that have, by default, will be the team that won SummerSlam and the Rumble. But King of the Ring is basically all teams that aren't those 2, plus the 2 that have the highest VP points at that point in time. So these teams are basically competing for an additional first round pick, and you'll do seeding based on VP. So team 1 versus 8 at that point, and you'll go through individual rounds to come up with a winner out of that period, basically. So it's a nice draft pick reward that you get out of another in-season event that we have going on here. And then events, and we'll call these kind of weekly events. Money in the Bank, if you keep up with wrestling, that's actually kind of a pay-per-view, but we're kind of qualifying this as the weekly type event because in effect, the way we have it set up is the highest scoring team in a 1 week gets the money in a briefcase. So the cool thing about this, if you think about, we talked about the winner of SummerSlam and the winner of Royal Rumble are guaranteed a spot in the playoffs, basically. Not guaranteed, but they've earned one. If you grab the Money in the Bank briefcase, basically, you're able to cash that in at any point. And if you cash that in, you basically have a 1 week match with one of those 2 winners. You're able to choose that. If you beat them into that individual week, and I think the thought would be find a heavy bye week, find week where they have injuries, then you steal their playoff spot. Now, if your playoff spot gets stolen, you still have the opportunity to make it based on 2 of our spots can be based on highest VP points. But this is another one of those, I think, wild card things that we built in there. Again, in the spirit of like how this works in WWE, that the person that has the briefcase is able to run into the match at any point in time when somebody's at their weakest, and they can steal away that spot, basically. The tag team match. I think we have this slated in the schedule for 1 week, and then it follows up within WrestleMania. So this is where the factions are broken into 2 teams. Factions are, again, going to be 4 teams. Your top VP team, victory point team, and your bottom victory point team are paired up. Your middle 2 are paired up. And then basically our winning tag teams through this get a 4th round pick plus a chance to compete in WrestleMania. So we'll end up with those 2-way pairs. We'll have 1 week, if you guys keep me honest there, where we compete. And then those winners go into kind of basically like a separate tag team playoff that will occur during our WrestleMania weeks of 16 and 17. Everybody's eligible. This is completely separate from, any chance to win the heavyweight championship at the end of the year. It's another kind of bonus that you can win some draft capital in addition to some money at the end of the year. And then we'll have some other individual matches that we add in throughout the year. For this year, I think we chose the hardcore match, and the retirement match. The hardcore match is a weekly thing that we have in place here. IDP starter only. Top team gets the final pick of round 3. So, again, it's a way to, in spirit, embody something else specifically focused, that you have the best defensive team for a week. You're rewarded in that hardcore match. The retirement match is something Scott came up with. I think it's a cool and interesting thought. Each losing team in this week, and then Scott, do we have this set up as like heads up matches during that week? We do. Okay. And then each losing team during that week must cut somebody from their starting 22. You're able to pick them back up on waivers, but in effect, you lost. No different than in the WWE. At least you have an opportunity to get them back in this case, but you have to dump them off your roster at that point in time.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to chime in with related to Anthony's question there about, who's kind of keeping track of all this and what lasts how long and what changes. So the MFL schedule is going to be the MFL schedule. When we talk about all these matches, we'll be keeping track of this through like Google Sheets and things that we share with you all. So you don't have to do anything extra for most of these. These are just kind of side things that we're running to just keep things fun and interesting. But like if you use your money in the bank, for instance, it doesn't change who you're playing in MFL that week. We just know, okay, you want to challenge the winner of the Rumble or the winner of SummerSlam to try to take their spot. So we're going to track and see if you beat that team or not. And if you do, then you get that automatic spot in the playoffs. Doesn't change who you're actually playing for VPs that week. It's just something that we'll take care of on the side.
Chris, do you want to roll for a while, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I could go. So we talked about the playoffs. Obviously, for this, it's themed as WrestleMania. It's going to be a 2-week. Going to be a 2-week setup, and as we said, the 2 top victory point earners each have a spot, and then the SummerSlam and the Royal Rumble. So there's a potential for it to be a 4-way contest. And it's going to be weeks 16 and 17 cumulative value. The winner gets a cash prize and a belt, and second place gets the last pick of the second round. We mentioned before that Money in the Bank, they can steal either the SummerSlam or the Royal Rumble spot. The Intercontinental Championship match is the 2 highest VP teams that aren't included in the heavyweight championship match. The winner will get a smaller belt and a cash prize. And then we have a match for everyone else who's not involved besides these teams that are in WrestleMania. So it's almost like the toilet bowl, but in this case, you want to have the best team. That's how you get 101. And then based on that, it'll be, I guess we didn't explicitly talk about this, but most likely points scored, since it's best ball, it'll be working your way back from there. So technically the worst team would get 102, but the winner of this match would get 101. So you have incentive to keep being competitive the entire year. And as we mentioned before, there's the tag team tournament. So those 3 tag team winning teams from the tag team week will compete here to get a bonus second round pick. We're adding a little bit of a twist here where you can actually betray your partner. And if you tell one of the 3 of us, the commissioners, you want to betray your partner, if you score more points than them that week, you would get both second round picks. But if you lose, or I should say, if your partner scores more than you, then they would get the second round pick. And all of this is based on if your team wins overall. So obviously, if you lose, you don't get any of those. So just a quick recap, just showing how you have a lot of opportunities to win money and belts. Heavyweight champion and intercontinental champion both get belts. A lot of opportunities to win money here. Obviously, being in the faction with these different belt winners will get you kind of vicariously get you some money there. Tons of opportunities to get picks as well. even if you're not necessarily one of those teams getting to the playoffs or WrestleMania throughout the year, you'll be able to get some of these higher value picks. Obviously, one of the biggest ones is King of the Ring is the first round pick, and the winner of like the toilet bowl is 101. So a lot of chances to keep getting money, keep getting picks throughout the year. So then what we're gonna start hopefully within the next few days, I don't know if we nailed down when we want to do the startup, but essentially we want to get that started soon. After all of this presentation, we're going to do the Royal Rumble simulation, and that's going to determine what your order is in picking your draft slot, because we didn't want it to just be random. Since there's no trades, we want everyone to have at least a little bit of influence over where they pick. Some people might like in the beginning, some people the end or the middle. It's going to be third round reversal. So that makes any pick relatively useful, so you're not burned if you're on one end of the draft or the other. The most important thing here is there's no trades. That's why we wanted to kind of streamline it, and this allows you to have some influence over where you do pick, so that you're not stuck somewhere with no trades. Typical 4-hour limit. I think all of us here are pretty active, so we'll run through that quick. We will have a pause from midnight to 6, so you're not worried about timing out. I don't think any of us will time out, but in the event of a timeout, we'll have it a skipped pick, and then just tell one of us who you want in that spot. If you don't act on it soon enough, it could be like the Vikings that one year where the next team gets to pick ahead of you. So make sure you stay on top of that.
I think we're going to try to hopefully get started maybe Friday afternoon, as long as everybody gets in like their pick order and stuff like that, and we can get stuff set in. But at some point this weekend, for sure, the intent was to try to get the draft rolling.
All right. So that is all for the league setup. Now we're going to do drafting our factions.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick before that, we do have about half the league on the call at this point. So if there are any questions about any of this, I know you've all read the rule book. I know it's a lot to digest, but if you guys are wondering anything, would be happy to clear it up for you. If not, we will go ahead and move into the faction draft.
If you're wondering how that big leg feels on your throat, I'm happy to show you as well. No questions?
All right. So yeah, we randomly picked the order here, and I think I might have to exit slideshow mode to be able to drag. But let me zoom. Whoop. Okay, I guess I can't zoom. So you're just gonna see my 7,000 tabs open as I've been working on a paper. But we had a random draw.
Hide all the weird ones.
What's that? No,
Hide all the weird tabs.
Yeah. So the Hulkster is going to get the first pick of faction mate, followed by me, and then Mach, and then Mach gets the pick again. We're just going to do a snake draft and grab our factions, and after this, we'll move into the Royal Rumble. And while that's playing in the background, we can just catch up with each other, introduce each other for the people who hopped on late or people who don't know each other. So we'll be happy to do that. But I'm excited to build my faction here. So Hulkster, I'll turn it over to you for the first pick, and if you let me know, I'll drag them over to your squad here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go a little surprising here. I want to reform the Mega Powers here, and I'm going to take the Macho Man.
No, you can't. We're the top faction leaders.
What makes you think that? It doesn't matter what you think.
God, I should have seen that coming.
Champion. I'll take the Rock.
You're taking the Rock.
Yeah.
That was a good long play there, buddy.
Yeah.
You had us all wondering what the hell was going on.
Chris didn't play along well enough, though.
I wouldn't celebrate being on Anthony's team, Vinny.
So
I'm celebrating being the first pick.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. For mine, I wanted someone who would really fit in well with the Four Horsemen and who also has some past experience being part of another great faction, and someone who has a lot of power for wheeling and dealing and getting things done. So I'm going to take the boss's son-in-law. Give me Triple H for my first pick.
Time to play the game, baby.
Welcome to the Four Horsemen.
Woo! All right. With my first pick, I'm gonna go Undertaker.
All right. You're back up on the clock again.
Yep. And then with this next pick, I'm gonna go John Cena.
All right. Up next, I wanted to at least have one other WCW alum on the squad. Also, member of the legendary tag team, the Harlem Heat. I'm going to go ahead here and take Booker T.
Nice.
Hulkster, your last two picks.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with you suck. Boom, boom. You suck. I'll take Mr. Kurt Angle.
That's a homer pick.
And then as a follow-up, I like clowning around, so I'm gonna take Mr. Dink down there too.
All right. And for my last pick, I'm gonna stick with I don't think he's much of a team player. But back when he was a Hollywood blonde, he was in the WCW. He and Flair butted heads a couple of times, but they can bury the hatchet now. And I'm gonna take Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that means Mach, you get Hot Rod.
All right, nice.
Unpredictable temper.
All right. Well, that is it for the faction draft. The factions are all set, and now it's time to have a little fake wrestling match here to see the draft pick order. And yeah, Chris, do you have that all queued up and ready to go?
I do. Yeah. Let me
And this is
Let
happening
me
live, so we
share
don't
my
know the
screen.
results yet. Chris just set this up earlier in the day, but this isn't a recording or anything. So if things go sideways, then we'll just run it later and record it. But we have no idea the order that we're going to run into the ring or when we're going to get knocked out. But we figured this would be a fun way to determine draft pick order.
I think we said we'd give 20 to 1 money if anybody wants to take Dink.
Unfortunately, Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Dink is actually in the game. So Cooter, I think you're stuck with Doink.
Oh, I
yeah,
thought
it's got to
download-
be Doink.
Oh, I thought you were downloading Dink.
I'll take all the extra length I can get. A doink.
Well, hopefully somebody squeezes the red nose tonight.
I feel like I'm messing up the technology today.
He's over there rearranging the entrance.
No, I'm gonna show you. So it's on the up and up. You're not sharing your screen anymore, right?
Nope, I stopped.
No, he's not. You're good. I like to see Vinny's in the gym right now. That's nice. Getting a workout in.
I'm not sure what's going on here.
So while Chris is figuring this out of curiosity, does anyone still watch wrestling or watch any of the current stuff? Or are we all just old heads who are loving the glory days of wrestling?
It's the Attitude Era or bust.
I watch it casually now. I just started probably the last 6 months or so, but it's not as easy to keep up with, I'd say. They've been doing this bloodline thing for like 5 years, I feel like.
Is that the Roman Reigns thing?
Yeah. It's And they got Rikishi's kids in it.
Oh, nice. I met Rikishi a couple of months ago. There's a local wrestling promotion here in Lexington that is interesting, but at every one of their events, they have some washed up wrestler show up, and Rikishi was there and signing autographs. I got to shake his hand, and he went in and did a run in and a, he's too old to wrestle, but he did a run in and gave someone the stink face, and everybody cheered. So he was good. And I saw badass Billy Gunn at another one of those, and he was real funny. And his kids are actually good wrestlers. The Gun Club, I think they were in maybe NXT or AEW or one of those for a little while, but they put
Is
on a
he
pretty good show too.
Is he the one that's still in like really good shape for how like ridiculous
He is.
Yeah.
He actually wrestled.
Yeah, okay.
He wrestled one of the local guys, so he didn't have to work too hard, but he did a good job. And then we actually just went to like a rock and baseball connection 2 weeks ago and saw Flying Brian Pillman Jr. So Brian Pillman's kid. Brian was a Cincinnati guy in WCW back in the day, and his kid was the main eventer after the baseball game. They had a wrestling ring set up just outside of the minor league stadium, and he wrestled. So that was pretty fun to watch. Brought the mascot in, and the mascot Stone Cold Stunner, the bad guy. A good time was had by all.
It's funny. I don't watch this anymore, but ironically, I did go to Raw on Monday.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, 20 years in between. It's like going to a fight to drink at.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I went to one Raw. I think it was the third ever Raw. So it was back when they they didn't pre-record it, and they didn't like have breaks in between matches. They'd cut to commercial in the middle of a match, and they'd come back from commercial and the match would still be going. It was in Youngstown, Ohio. It was just before the Attitude Era. I remember I bought like Diesel gloves. Little 12-year-old Scott was a big Diesel fan. And it was a good time. But it's been, God, that was probably, well, if I was 12, that was 28 years ago. So it's been a minute since I've been to a Raw. All right, Chris, how's it looking?
I'm having a hell of a time over here.
All right, why don't we do this? You can just set it up to like stream on Twitch or record it in some other way where we're not trying to do a Zoom at the same time.
Okay.
You can record it and share it, and then if you can get it out tonight or tomorrow, we can just watch at our leisure and get a sense of who they are, and we'll let it breathe after we post it. Like if you're able to get it up tonight, awesome.
Yeah.
We won't announce anything till tomorrow. If it gets out tomorrow, we'll give it an hour or two for people to have a chance to look at it, and then we'll start saying, hey, you're on the clock to pick your spot, and we'll get those knocked out here pretty quickly.
Sounds good. Yeah, I have a way to use my monitor as a or my laptop as a monitor for the PlayStation, but it's not letting me share my screen, which is strange. But yeah, I can record it. I'll make a YouTube link, and then I'll put that in the group chat.
Cool.
Sounds
Sorry
good
about that, guys.
No worries. Well, thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah, good luck this season, everybody. Again, the members of the Four Horsemen, welcome to the greatest faction and most prestigious faction in wrestling history. Look forward to doing great things with you all this season, and thank you all for joining this weird, random, crazy, fun idea that we had.
And I'll get the banners updated so we know who's in what faction.
Sweet. All right. Well, I'm sweating my ass off, so I'm going to go ahead and hop off. I hope everybody has a great rest of the night, and we'll see you all soon.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You